So this week I discovered something rather special.
Many years ago, Mary Poppins taught us that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Her recipe was simple. Mix that which was good for you with that which was fun or sweet, and it would help you become better in a most delightful way. As the parent of 6 children, I know how difficult it is to instill in children those important values that have stood the test of time, especially when everywhere they turn, the messages they hear on the TV, the radio, and at the movies is, forget the medicine, just eat sweets.
That's Forrest Baker III, owner of the Feature Films for Families production company and streaming service. Basically, think of them as the yang to Troma Films' yin. If it's good old-fashioned, wholesome entertainment you're hankering for, with none of that nasty stuff that ruins kids' films these days, like plots, charismatic actors, and dialogue that doesn't sound like it's been written by a rogue AI. Oh yeah, and a point, then the Feature Films for Families company and streaming service is for you. They're probably best known for having produced and distributed such classic movies as The Buttercream Gang or Gunter Wheeler and the Paper Brigade. And I will put my foot down right now and say that I was frankly appalled to find out that Robert Englund stars in the latter of those two. And even more shocked to find out that the Feature Films for Families company and streaming service actually gave a nod in the trailer for this film aimed at Englund's appearance as Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Just going to show that just because you're a Mormon-based Puritan production company and streaming service, you can acknowledge an actor's most infamous role as a child murderer in the trailer for your kids' film. The Feature Films for Families company and streaming service first began life in 1986, as far as I can tell, both creating content and distributing pre-existing content that they deemed to be acceptable for the whole family. Indeed, Forrest believed that contemporary television and radio was basically an open sewer to immorality. So for a film to be deemed appropriate for the Feature Films for Families company and streaming service, you really had to have good, honest values. As a result, a good chunk of these films feel like synthetic Invasion of the Body Snatchers type replicants of what aliens must think family cinema is. And that brings us to today's topic, and I've got a lot to unpack because, oh boy, this thing's got a bit of an interesting history from a distribution standpoint that we'll definitely need to untangle here. Horse Crazy is a 2001 kids' adventure movie written and directed by Eric Hendershot. Hendershot seems to predominantly work in kids' films and films aimed at the family, with multiple titles under his belt, including the Clubhouse Detectives series of films and A Kid Called Danger. The film follows Tyler and his sister Sam, 2 very young kids who live a fairly ordinary life, until one day a new student by the name of Stoney Davis joins the class. Stoney is a Texan and a real-life cowboy, and Tyler becomes absolutely fascinated by him. The pair hang out and grow a real friendship, and one day during class, the teacher decides to play a tape all about the majestic wild horses of Nevada. Tyler becomes obsessed with the idea of taming a horse for himself, and so teaming up with Stoney and his little sister, who sneaks along for the ride, the trio hitch a ride to Nevada via his older brother's van while en route to visit his girlfriend. And when his van breaks down in the middle of the desert, hilarity ensues. He discovers the kids make a run for it to try and capture a horse, and Tyler's brother questions his relationship, which seems a bit controlling. But this aside, all is not well, as 2 bandits are planning to steal a prize-winning stallion that's passing through the area the kids are in, and several secrets regarding Stoney's family come out, all resulting in a safe and sensible time for all, as Tyler and crew desperately race against time to save the day. To start with, This film is literally the definition of vanilla, and I really feel like I can't do justice to quite how plain and generic it was. This is to cinema what the Itchy and Scratchy Lemonade episode was to kids' television. I actually felt the life being drained from me. All the dialogue in this film is written in such a way that it's very matter of fact. It's very stilted, and honestly, no one under the age of 65 would talk like any of the characters shown in this film. None of the dialogue is in any way interesting. There's nothing witty or smart or multi-layered about the exchanges in this film. And really not helping this bad dialogue is the cast. Now, I don't like to pick on child actors really because, well, everyone has to learn their craft somewhere, and it's cliched to go for such an easy target of picking on a bunch of kids who are probably only just starting out in this industry. But I was astounded that while they were bad, the adult cast were only just surpassing them. It was stunning. I have to assume these people were volunteers because there's no other way that they could have given performances they give here and consider themselves serious actors. They're all robots. They don't vary their accents for the scenarios that play out, and everything's delivered with a pasty emptiness. They just speak every line, void of emotion. The Bandits are the best part of this movie, and they're literally modelled and lifted directly from the wet bandits from Home Alone, only somehow less charming, less slimy, and more meh. And that's me being praiseworthy. They're the best performances in this film. Only adding to the misery is the plot itself, which should have maybe been a 40-minute short feature, yet somehow this has been dragged out unceremoniously to a full feature-length 84 minutes. And it's just painful. Really it is. The kids find out about wild horses, sneak into Tyler's brother's van, get discovered, get told not to go looking for wild horses, and this is all within the first 34 minutes of the runtime. The following hour after that is literally just a game of tug-of-war between the bandits and the kids for the horse. And it's just so drawn out and convoluted as to be almost unbearable. Seriously, I can only hand on heart say I've turned off one movie on the first viewing because it was unbearably dull. And this film nearly made it too. One of the scenes that most stuck out for me, and mild spoilers ahead, is that Stoney turns out to not be a real cowboy. Shock horror. He's just a kid who lives in a trailer park whose dad is either dead or missing. He got his cowboy stuff from a neighbour who used to be a performer. And there's a really nice moment where Tyler reassures his friend that he doesn't have to pretend to be something he isn't, and that Tyler will still be besties with him. 10 minutes later though, Stoney's back to pretending to be a cowboy, and Tyler and Sam seem to have completely forgotten. This film's supposed to be promoting healthy morals, and yet I actually think it's gone too far and started teaching kids the wrong kind of way to behave inadvertently. Another example of this would be the older brother's relationship with an engineer lady who helps rescue him from the roadside. She knows Tyler's brother has a girlfriend, and Tyler's brother knows he's made a promise to his partner to see her for Christmas. But that doesn't stop them outrageously flirting with each other, and in the end, he never goes to his girlfriend's house. The pair actually get together. I mean, I know they aren't married or anything, but cheating is hardly something that should be condoned in a family movie, surely. Also, for a film about kids trying to tame wild horses, the kids in this film look pretty terrified of horses. Just saying. Of what set design there is, it's fairly lackluster. Tyler has the emptiest, biggest bedroom I've ever seen a kid have, and with the majority of the film being set on location in the desert, you'd have thought they'd have gone all out on the scenes where they actually had to build a set. But no, it's all totally minimalist, and it feels like little effort was put in. I will say though, for my money's worth, the cinematography and composition was lovely. and there was some really nice rolling shots of mountains and some really good use of locations. It's just a shame that a massive chunk of the direction is so vanilla as to be tiresome. It's all painting by numbers, played by the book with no real standout wow shots. Everything just looks like it could have been on a postcard at a bus station. When it comes to the cast as well, the direction's quite lackluster. Again, not to rag on the child actors too much, but yeah, they don't animate too good. But then again, the adult cast are almost as bad once again, so I suppose the kids have that working for them. The soundtrack as well is acceptable, and only acceptable. This thing's entirely MIDI composed from what I heard, and it's only 2 clicks away from being generic stock phone hold music. It's better than a lot of low-budget features I've seen in my time, but acceptable these days isn't, if you get my drift. Did I mention that this is a Christmas movie? Because this is totally a Christmas movie. I'm not kidding. The film opens with Tyler establishing that Christmas has just ended before quickly flashing back to just before Christmas, with the rest of the film taking place through Christmas. The movie mentions it once or twice in passing, and there's a blink and you'll miss it shot of a Santa magnet on Tyler's fridge, but that's about it. There's one shot of Tyler talking on the phone to Stoney next to a Christmas tree, and that's your lot. Christmas pretty much disappears from this film, which left me wondering why bother setting it at that time of year in the first place if you're only going to immediately dismiss it. Another very odd thing about this film, it's exempt from classification in the UK, and I will say they've skirted that classification very bloody slyly here. An exemption classification in the UK is usually reserved for films that are aiming to inform or educate rather than entertain. In short, as long as you show that your film has an element of learning or education about it, you can make it available for all ages. So how does Horse Crazy get an exemption? Well, on the back of the box there's an activity session that the parents can use to engage with the kids after they've seen the film. Literally printing those 3 or 4 questions on the back of the box and then sticking those same questions on the DVD as a special feature is all that was required to get this film an exempt classification. That's sneaky, and in a very troubling way. I got this copy of Horse Crazy in the UK, and as far as I can tell, this film has multiple distributors. First and foremost, the movie itself has the Feature Films for Families and Streaming Service logo topping and tailing it on the box. But then in the DVD Extras menu, it's also claimed to have been distributed by a company known as Pure Entertainment. Looking into that, however, only seems to direct me towards Pure Flix. So either Pure Entertainment went belly up a few years ago and Google's forgot they existed, or Pure Entertainment and Pure Flix are somehow connected. Which I'm pretty sure they aren't, as Pure Flix was founded in 2005. Only muddying the waters further, when I went to look up this film's distribution information on Amazon, I found that this movie and a load of other Feature Films for Families and Streaming Service movies were being sold under another distributor called Artiflix. It's a total head melter, and it looks really shady. The extras on this set are woeful, frankly. A set of trailers, a digital activity section for the parents and children, and a message from Forrest is about as good as it gets. This disc also made my PlayStation 4 freeze, to the point that I literally had to unplug my machine from the wall just to get it to turn back on again. And even then it took an hour of Googling to get my controller working again. In all honesty, so little happens in this film, and so much of it is just barely on the cusp of being acceptable, that pretty much what I've written here is literally everything I have to say about this movie. It was a really, really, really boring film. Like, really boring. It was like a good movie, but with all the good bits cut out. Vanilla to the point of being frightened milk. Would young children like this film? Quite possibly. Would I show this movie to young kids? Absolutely not. It's almost like the kid's guide to being a sociopath. It's dull as dishwater and one to be avoided if you can help it. The last I heard from the Feature Films for Families company and streaming service, they'd got themselves into a spot of bother with the FTC for cold calling people trying to sell them subscription services. As one guy on Reddit put it, telemormonism, which I thought was a lovely way of phrasing that. But they still put films out to this day. They even made a sequel to this movie? How did they even do that? There was barely enough material for one of these things. Oh, sod it, that one's for another time. I need to lie down and some filth. Till next time.